students. My name is Mike Duffy. I'm the Street Operations Superintendent for the City of Cedar Rapids. So I understand that you're learning a little bit about salt and the properties of salt and how that affects melting on a road pavement. And so I'll show you a little bit about our operation here at the City of Cedar Rapids. And it's my understanding then that you guys are going to go back and then try and figure out ways to maybe improve our processes a little bit. So I'd be interested in hearing your research on that. So typically what we use in the City of Cedar Rapids is a mixture between salt, sand, and a flake chloride. We also take that salt and we put it down on the roads in a number of different ways. And one is just basically your salt, and that's just throwing the salt down on the pavement. We mix the salt with sand, and that's in conditions when we need a little bit of extra grit, so that sand provides that grit for us. A lot of times before an event starts, we'll put a liquid brine mixture, which is basically salt and water mixed together, out on a pavement to really prohibit the bond between the ice pack and the concrete pavement or the asphalt pavement. It's a lot harder to go back and get the ice off of the pavement than it is actually to go out and pre-treat it. Another application that we would use that brine for is after an event. If we do have ice pack on a pavement and the temperatures are okay to do this, we'll actually go out and we'll put the brine down, which will melt through the ice, get underneath it, and help that pop up. Obviously, the temperatures have to be right for us to do that. We wouldn't be able to do that when it's, say, 20 below zero. Salt is effective down to about 15 degrees. We have a lot of variables in that, different things that maybe would change our approach to an event. And that's the difference between our air temperature and our pavement temperature. And so, and traffic has a big effect on what our pavement temperatures are, excuse me. So if it's 25 degrees outside, it's often 35 degrees on Blair's Ferry Road. That's just from the traffic driving on the pavement, the tires, and just the amount of traffic and the exhaust. And so obviously a residential street, the pavement temperature is going to be much lower than it would be on a heavily trafficked roadway. So behind me is our brine maker. And what we do with this is we actually just dump the salt into the top of this machine. We feed water through that, and then we pump the brine solution, which is between 23 and 26% solution, out into some storage tanks that are outside of this building. Our trucks then pick that material up. One interesting thing is that we put the material down in a stream as opposed to a fan, and the reason that we do that is we're trying to get basically a mixture between our dry brine solution and pavement. What we found is that if we have that fan version out, the entire surface is then covered, and it dilutes that to the point where we actually end up with some refreezing. So we really want to get a stream of it out, and then we just let it kind of dilute out from there. One of the things, and the reason we add other solutions, and this will be where your experiments come into play, is we're trying to become more effective with our material as the temperatures drop. And so really what salt's doing is if you add salt to water and you freeze it, if just water will freeze at 32 degrees. If you add salt to it, that lowers the temperature at which that salt will, or that water salt mix will freeze. And so you'll probably learn about that in your experiments. And so when we add a flake chloride, we're actually taking our melting temperature, our effectiveness of our material down below 20 below zero. And so that's very handy, obviously, when the temperatures get 20 below zero. One of the things that we often have to talk to our operators about, especially, it's our newer operators, but when they come on board, the philosophy in their mind anyway is always that if they need to melt more, they put more material down, and that really isn't the case. And so we really need to make sure that they understand how salt works and how much material you put down, and then to leave that material and let it work. One of the other things that you'll find through your experiments is we have this thing called scatter, and so as our salt comes out of the back of the truck, it hits the pavement, it scatters across the pavement. So if the surface is wet, we can better direct our material. So one of the ways that we would do that too then is we would pre-wet our material, so as it's coming out of the back of our truck, it's wet, it would then stick to the surface and we wouldn't have all that scatter. Okay, so these are 10,000 gallon brine tanks, and so this would be the solution that we have. that I showed you inside. This is the salt and water mix. It comes out to these storage tanks, but of course the salt will start to eventually, if we don't use it on a regular basis, flow to the bottom. So we actually have the ability to take the material off the bottom and we recirculate it through the different tanks. So it's like an agitator that we send it through, so that we always have a good mix of our brine salt. So this would be our salt dome. We could put 4,500 tons of salt inside this facility, and on a typical year we go through about 10,000 tons of salt within the city. Our budget for salt is just short of $1 million. And we pay $78 per ton for salt. We take the salt, so obviously we don't want to just throw salt on the pavement all the time. There are places in the city where we do that. Downtown is one of them, as long as the temperatures allow us to do that. But when we get into the residential areas and some of the areas where we don't want to put as much salt down, we go with a mix, and I won't tell you what the mix is. You guys can do that through your lab experiments of sand and salt.